All right. Welcome, NASB Nation. We are super duper excited. We've got the Dream Makers team on. We've also got a few select folks on just for this very special Zoom class, I like to call it, where we've got Mr. Blaire, junior partner, newest brother to the partner group. And I'll tell you what, I couldn't be more excited because, look, when I had Nick come on, I was super duper excited because that's like another nerd in the group because I always felt like I was like the nerd. But I tell you what, Blaire is like my next of kin as far as nerdiness. No offense, because it's so cool to be a nerd, right? And like you're not a dork though. Nerds are cool because I try to act like we're smart. But anyway, so but here's the thing, guys. You've got Blaire and myself, and what we're going to be talking about today is maximizing your wealth. So Blaire, tell us a little bit of a background about yourself, how you got to NASB, and why is maximizing your wealth such an important subject?
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Ashley. I really appreciate it. Look, guys, I came here. I was 22 when I got licensed, 23 when I started selling. I just got out of college, so I really came with negative money because I had a lot of student loans to take care of eventually. But really, I started at NASB with like $500 in a credit card. So I really didn't have much to my name. I was fortunate. I was blessed to have a family dynamic where I didn't have to support myself in those, first year or two. I had a structure to lean on, a foundation to lean on. So I feel very blessed. I've launched agents that don't have that and feel blessed to come from that. But I was fortunate not to have to do that either because of NASB and because how fast you can really create a cash flow in this business with really very little invested into it. You can really start creating wealth really dang quickly. And I really think there's kind of two levels to what we're going to talk about tonight. Ashley, there's creating wealth, right? And getting not just your personal finances, but your business finances, more importantly, under your control. Because I can almost promise you this, if you've come to NASB from any other line of work, you'll probably start making more money than you've ever made in your life. But the other thing that's true is you're going to start spending more money than you've ever spent in your life. And unless you have a handle on where that money's coming from, where that money's going, it can get really, really confusing. And with confusion comes stress. With stress comes a lot of bad decisions, and bad decisions get you out of this business. And so that's what we want to do. We want to focus on creating that wealth through control and through process and through systems and discipline. And then we'll talk about kind of maximizing that wealth, maximizing tax strategies, investment strategies at the end there. But really, I think what we could start with, look, we're going to lay out some game plans here. We're going to lay out some strategies. At the end of the day, what I hope to get out of this call is a blueprint that you can put to anything that you value in life. What is it that you think is financial security, right? What do you define that as? What do you define as being wealthy, right? Is it $1 million in the bank? Is it 6 months worth of savings? Is it being able to go to the grocery store and not have to worry about the prices? I don't know. I can't define that for you. You have to define it for yourself. And I'm hoping I'm getting your mind jogging and you start writing this stuff down, right? Maybe text it to your coach or text it to Ashley. Hey, this is the first thing that I want to accomplish. This is my first step to wealth in my mind, is being able to do this or have this. Ashley, do you remember coming to NASB? I know your backstory and the struggles that you came through, but what was the first kind of thing that you accomplished that you decided, hey, I'm a lot better off than I came here?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was telling you earlier that, in my 20s, I was an idiot when it came to my finances. So if anybody can relate, when I was 18, I got all these credit cards and I thought I was the coolest person on the planet. I didn't really have any financial backing as far as wisdom goes from my parents. It's not their fault. It was just maybe potentially they just didn't teach it to me. So therefore, I had no competency about finances. I went and spent everything. I actually got into a lot of credit card debt, about $25,000. And to some people, hey, look, that's not a lot of money, but to somebody that's broke and they're only making, $1,100 a month at a Gold's Gym, that you're broke, especially when you have to pay the minimum payments. And I just realized I was faced with, I can't pay this. I'm an idiot. I chose myself. I chose this. I took full ownership of it. and I had to face bankruptcy. And I was telling you earlier, Blaire, that sometimes you have to choose, but I was forced, in my opinion, to become a financial steward because of the situation that I was faced with. And was that the right decision? I don't know. You know, when you're 25 years old and you're broke as a joke, and you've got all these credit card debt bills and all that good stuff, and your car that you've got to pretty much, it's going to get what is it called, repoed or towed or whatever it's called. And the darn bank had to take my car. That was embarrassing. I had no credit for 7 years. And so, yeah, that was a very devastating time. All I could do was live on cash. So for me, I was at rock bottom when it came to learning about financial wisdom. And I had to really let that dollar bill grow to a very astronomical level. So that's kind of where I started. But as far as that first monumental point for me, honestly, I had never saved more than $20 in my savings account. Even when I started with NASB, gosh, that was back in 2013, but I want to say 2000. So I started with NASB in 2013, was part-time, got pregnant, was a stay-at-home mom for 10 months, drew the line in February of 2015. And that's when I went all in full time. So when I went all in full time in 2015, I didn't make my first 10,000 in a month until May of 2016, which is about a year and a half later. That's when I started saving. No joke. And I was so upset with myself. But for me, a monumental point for me was having $10,000 of an emergency fund in my savings account. So for me, that was like that was my thing was, gosh, if I could just get to $10,000 in my savings. It took me a year and a half to do it, but gosh darn, I'm so grateful I did. So how about you?
That's awesome. I remember having a year's worth of my bills. That felt really good to realize that if something were to happen, look, we don't get, unless you buy disability insurance, we don't have disability insurance. There's nobody here to save us. So you got to kind of make your own safety net. And that was a pretty big cause of stress for me early on in my career. So when I realized, hey, I have it now, I have a year's worth of safety net, that was a huge reliever to me in this business. And I think that's why most of you guys are on this call. I really think that if you're listening in, you're one of two people. You're looking to relieve financial stress, or you're looking to learn some principles to leverage to your team. Those are the only two people kind of listening in. And if you're the second, that's great, because you're gonna have an agent that you can't teach how to sell better. So you're gonna have to bring value to that agent in a different way. And this is a great tool to do that with. But if you're the first, I hope that we're gonna give you a lot of homework tonight. This is not easy. And I think that's the most frustrating part of any financial book I've ever read, any investment book I've ever read, is when I got done with the book, nothing had changed. I had to go put it into practice. I had to go put a lot more work than just reading the book into it to get the outcomes that they were talking about. And so that's going to be the same here. When we get done tonight, nothing really is going to change, except you're going to be armed with a little bit more knowledge and hopefully with the discipline to put it into action. And so that's why I hope, actually, I hope I can, if you want to jump right into it, I'd really like to start with the business side and kind of work our way into the personal side. And I hope that this works.
And while you're doing that, I do have it set up for you to share your screen with you. Let me know if you're having, there you go. Phenomenal. And so guys, just as a preface is that make sure that if there's something we teach that your direct coach is not teaching, make sure you ask your direct coach. Jordan and Greg have been the biggest financial wisdom gurus in my life, including Craig Harvey. I never did a big financial move unless I asked them first. So they know every heartbeat of my finances, of my IRAs, of my savings, of my deposits I make every single month. And I was very vulnerable years ago to unload that information to them because I wanted to be smart with my finances. And I knew that those gentlemen, I knew that they were very successful at being a financial steward. So that's like, in my opinion, key tip number one is make sure you're not listening to broke people when it comes to being financially successful, period. So don't do that. Your direct coaches and your upline, in my opinion, that's a really good pathway for you. So lots of ways to skin a cat. So we're just going to show you guys just a few ways to really create and maximize your wealth. So Blaire, take it away, buddy.
Yeah. So I think this is the basis of everything in this business is like I said, you're going to make more, you're going to spend more. So let's get clarity over where that money's coming from, where that money's going. And the first step is to separate your business money from your personal money. And it's as simple as going and making a new checking account. So if your personal expenses and your business expenses are coming out of the same checking account, we need to get that fixed like tomorrow. This is like an immediate fix that needs to happen. And it doesn't have to be a business account. It can just be a separate personal account. If you don't have all those business structures set up, that's fine. Just get them separated where your commissions and your business expenses right here are coming in and out of one account. You can get a separate credit card if you like credit cards, and you can run everything and get some points off of there if you're disciplined with credit cards. But and then we want to set aside, taxes out of this account. But here's really the key point, especially if you're in your first year in this business, where most agents struggle and most agents eventually fail out of this business, is they confuse their cash with their profits. And they're two very different things. And so what we want to do is we want to pay ourselves profits out of our business, not free cash, because you're going to have lead expenses in the future. And a lot of times your commissions and your lead expenses are not going to line up perfectly. So you want to plan for the future. You also want to plan for a drought, right? Or a slump in the future, especially when you're only working off advances. And so my kind of hard and fast rule is as soon as possible, may not be like day one in this business, but as soon as possible, we want to make sure that we have 4 weeks worth of leads in this account at all times. Now, that's pretty vague depending on the kind of leads that you're working and your lead budget, which is ultimately going to be indicative of the income that you're generating in this business and how much you're going to get out of it. But whatever that is, whatever you've decided with your coach, 4 weeks worth of lead costs in that. So if you're spending $300 a week, it's $1,200. If you're spending $500, it's $2,000. You guys know that math. But what I tell folks that are practicing this is that if you have a $500 a week lead budget and you went out and bought leads and now there's $1,500 in there, and then you just got paid $600, you can only pay yourself $100 because that's your profit is only $100 right now. Now, once the next commission comes in and you have $2,900, now you can pay yourself $900, but there always has to be $2,000 in that account or else it's not profit. And if you operate under that assumption, because what's going to happen is you're going to get to 1,500 one week. Maybe your commissions are delayed. You wrote a bunch of Aetna insurance for some reason. And then all of a sudden you got to get more leads. And now you're at 1,500 and you buy another 500. Now you're at 1,000. You still got to wait for all those commissions to come in before you pay yourself your profits. So it takes a lot of discipline, especially when you have financial burdens happening in your personal life. But unless we keep this positive, everything else in our personal life will fail if we don't master this. And what happens is you come here with a lot of financial stress, most people come here negative money-wise. And your first instinct is to take all the money that you make out of that first lead investment or that first month's worth of commissions and put it into all those things that are stressing you out. And I understand that. But if we don't save this 4 weeks worth of leads, we won't have the thing that's going to go pay off all those debts in the future. So you want to make sure you're fueling the right vehicle, you're fueling the right transformer to eventually go, destroy all the things that you're trying to destroy in the NASB system. It will happen. It's going to take a lot of delayed gratification and discipline, but if you do it right, I promise you it's worth it. Once you pay yourself your profits, we can jump into this later, but this is where the sky is really the limits. When you get into your personal, the first thing that I would tell you to do is pay yourself first. Set a savings goal. If it's 10% of everything you put into your personal account, if it's 20%, and live and die by that number. In the beginning, I paid myself 20% of everything that I made before I paid my bills. And if I didn't have money to pay my bills after I did that, I just didn't pay them. Because over time, I knew if I never did that, I would never save. And so it really takes that discipline really early on. And I'll get into these kind of other things, but this is where all your personal expenses are coming out. And there's some gray area here if you're doing like business structures and you have employee benefits, but this is the basis of everything that I want you guys to understand. If you do nothing at all today and you do this, you will be far, far ahead of most people that don't put this into practice. I'll finish it with this. Actually, this part here is I had an agent a couple of years back. He was one of my top agents. He was doing phenomenal. He was making like $14,000 a month, but all of his finances were mixed up. And his only gauge of success was how much his savings was growing. That was his gauge of success. So he wasn't factoring in any of his personal spending, any of his lifestyle, any of his lead costs, nothing. He was just saying, well, look, I feel like I'm making all this money, but my savings is only growing X. I'm really not making all that much. And that's just such a warped way of looking at your finances. But if you don't track it, you can't control it. You can't have any vision over it. He was doing extremely well in this business. He just had no vision over it because he didn't have any of this in control. So I hope that helps somebody. Write that down, take a copy of this. I'm sure we'll get the recording out, but that's really the basis first. Ashley, you have anything to follow up on that?
Dude, I mean, you're exactly right. I absolutely love this. And guys, you can actually have it where I know I've got multiple bank accounts, but in the beginning, when we first started this, is we had the checking account and then we had a savings account and it was with the same bank. And that's really cool because what he's talking about is you're able to move money very beautifully, very easily, whether it's every single week, every single month. I definitely recommend every single month, but if you take into practice, just like what he said, it's a discipline. This is a brand new habit for all of you guys. So you need to make sure that you understand that. And one of the best ways to create a new habit is number one, you got to start small. Number two is you don't miss twice. Does that make sense? So if you're like, but I want to go on a date night, I want to go spend $100, because I do have this money in my account right now and I can just wait till next week. No. Don't miss twice. Does that make sense? So, and that's one thing, like, Blaire was telling me, like, well, what did you guys do, first couple of years? And guys, I didn't go out on dates. McDonald's was like not even a date. That was a luxury. Chick-fil-A was a luxury. We would have a date night and have spaghetti dinner when the kids would go to bed. You have to upgrade your perspective. You've got to, I hate saying the word because I don't want you to have a broke mindset. I just need you to live as if you are broke, but I need you to have a wealth mindset. Does that make sense? So you are not broke yourself, but I need you to act like you're broke and have a wealth mindset of accumulation. Because this, if you put it into practice, this is honestly what we've taught for years. We've taught this for years, is being able to shuttle that money into another account and legit act like it's not even there. But as long as you've got that amount of money in there for your expenses, as far as business expenses go, you guys, you're thinking like a business owner, you're thinking like an entrepreneur. And that's exactly what I'm really excited about. So we've already talked about profits over cash flow. We've talked about, obviously once you've paid out your expenses, you paid out that lead, the raw material, then you can pay yourself profit. Make sure that you're funneling that money to your taxes. And again, guys, when I look at the 20% when it comes to taxes, I am probably paying a full 20%, 10% to taxes, and then 10% to like an IRA, STEP IRA, a 401k. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but understand that you're gonna have to pay the government something at the very end of the year when you do your taxes. So, but you don't have to be anal with it. Some people, Blaire, it's like the Dave Ramsey, they have like all these buckets of, okay, I've got my cash here, and it's like, guys, keep it simple. Keep it simple, because when you keep it simple, you can duplicate it. So let's go ahead and talk about, we've already talked about reinvesting in your leads, setting tax money aside, or obviously, coming out of that the business checking account. Go next, when you talk about the business personal investment 101, QB self-employment.
Yeah. So what I like to do is there's an app called QuickBooks Self-Employed. So if you're not running a business structure, an LLC, an S Corp, and there's a lot to that. We're not going to get into it. Ask your RVP about it. They're probably doing it, and they'll let you know when it's time to do that. A lot of times they'll tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, you're doing really well. It's time to adopt this practice to save more of your money. Until then, you can just put out of mind. But QuickBooks Self-Employed is a great app on your phone. You just plug in your accounts. It literally tracks all of your expenses, and you just slide your finger left and right. This was personal, this was business, this was personal. Now, if you only connect your business accounts, it'll make it super simple because everything will be business. And it'll generate reports for you. It'll track your mileage. It'll track everything. It'll make tax time super simple, which leads me to my next point. Get a tax professional. Don't skimp on an accountant. I don't care how much. I pay a lot for an accountant. I pay, if I told you guys how much, like I tell people how much I pay for an accountant and they balk at me, but the guy's worth it. He saves me way more money than he costs.
What
And
is it,
so
Blaire, the cost of like a good CPA? Because, you know, everyone's a little bit different. Do you meet them quarterly? Do you meet them annually? What's kind of like the average that somebody, you know, so they're not getting taken advantage of, in other words?
I'd say for a regular personal return in New Jersey, now I'm in an expensive state. I'd say if you're paying $700 a return, that's probably pretty normal. I don't have that good of a pulse of what it costs in the South, to be honest with you.
I would say about 300 to 700. You know, there are some that, you know, go up to 1,000, but it just depends on how much stuff you've got. But I would definitely agree with you. About 700 is a good median right there for sure. And do you do it quarterly? Do you meet them annually?
I meet with my guy. I have my guy on a retainer, so I meet with him whenever I want. He answers the phone when I call him. So if I have a question, he's more a tax planner. So we're doing things in advance rather than me showing up in April saying, "What can you do with this?" So I want to be proactive about my tax planning rather than be, trying to make up for mistakes I made throughout the year. So try to get some. What I would recommend is try to find an accountant that has a wealth management side to his office, or like my guy sells insurance. He has a wealth management side to his office where he does investments, and part of that has to do with insurance. So he knows how my business works. He also runs his business in a in a corporate structure that's identical to mine. So I whatever he's doing for himself, he's doing for me, so I can trust him. So do some research. Don't just pick the first guy that comes, but QuickBooks Self-Employed, hire a professional. I don't know how much time we have. You want to just rattle off some quick deductions that you should be tracking? Or do you think
Yeah.
that's pretty?
Yes.
I think the biggest, if you track nothing, leads, mileage, your cell phone, your internet bill, all your licensing and insurance and office supplies, anything that you would use if you didn't have it in your personal life, right? And you would have to go get it to run your business, that's a deduction. So if you didn't have internet at your house and you needed internet to run your business, well, shoot, that's a business deduction. Anything that you buy clothing wise that has our logo on it or was for work, it's for advertising, that's a deduction. Any meal that you buy well, again, I'm not a tax professional. There's a lot of gray areas in all these deductions, but meals, travel meals, all your travel to convention was a write-off. So if you spent $400 to get to convention, or if you're like me, spent a couple $1,000s to get to convention, and all my agents, it's all a write-off in this business. And I will say that there's a misconception between write-offs and expenses. Like, it doesn't cost you 54 cents a mile to drive your car. It may cost Ashley 54 cents a mile to drive that Corvette, but sure as heck doesn't cost me 54 cents a mile to drive my little Sonata. So you're going to get a lot more out of your deductions a lot of times than you're going to have than it looks like on paper. But that's important to realize. Like, I had an agent tell me it's costing me 54 cents a mile to drive my car around here and knock on these dang leads. Like, well, no, that's what you get in a deduction. That doesn't mean it's the true cost of driving around there. You want to jump right into kind of some personal deductions?
I say this because you hit on a really good point about what is it going to cost you in order to get what you want here. And, you know, sometimes whether it's a new agent or an existing agent, and I start hearing, oh, well, you know, gosh, the cost of gas and the cost of leads. And really, you seriously want me to wear an NASB logo shirt? And no, I'm not going to invest in an iPad Pro. Okay, well then stay broke. Legit, that is my rebuttal to anybody that has that kind of a employee mindset, because you are running a raw material business. So why are you not investing in the raw material? Just like if you're running a restaurant, just like if you're opening up a bank. Guys, we don't have a brick and mortar building that we run out of. Now, for some of you guys, if you've got a closed entrapment in your house, that could be a write-off. I legit probably write off 50% of the income that I have, that's what I write off. So that's kind of like a good median for me. But again, it's a gray area because maybe you're buying a house that year. Maybe you need to show that you made more income that year so that you can get that house approval. So it's going to be different year over year. But typically, Blaire, my thing is about 50% write off. And we're talking every McDonald's on receipt, Chick-fil-A. I mean, you name it, I will write that rascal off. And again, I'm not as anal when it comes to tracking the deductions because, again, everything is through QuickBooks. It is the simplest way to actually live and not be stressed out about your deductions. QuickBooks does everything for you. And also, here's a little tip is that plug and share your CPA on your QuickBooks so he can actually look at it every single month, right? So, and just like what Blaire said, have a good relationship with your CPA. I have a financial advisor. I was just talking to Blaire about, I now have an estate planner. So, I was talking to Chad Milner. I look up to that guy. So there's so many facets. Let the experts do their job. If they tell you to do something, do it. If they tell you to do something, do it. If my CPA says, Ashley, you got to put, $50,000 into your SEP IRA, he's telling me that because that's a write-off that I don't have to pay the government. So your SEP IRAs, charitable donations, foundations, whatever it is, we're starting a foundation already this year, okay? There's so many things that you can do. Talk to your CPA. Tell them what your dreams are, what your goals are, the financial forecasting. That's what they're there for. So next up, we're going to talk about, you want to talk about the delayed gratification? Yeah?
Yeah, I want to talk about just some investment 101. So that was kind of creating the wealth, right? So making sure we're making money, making sure we know what money is really ours. Let's maximize our profitability and tax strategies. But now that we have it, we want to save as much of it as possible. And I'm only going to look, again, I'm not a financial professional, seek professional advice, but there's really 2 or 3 things that I want to make you guys aware of. The first one is a SEP IRA. SEP IRA, there's different limits. When you're self-employed, you get to open up a SEP IRA rather than a traditional IRA, and it has much different limits than the traditional, which is like 7,500, I think, in 2021. SEP IRAs are 50,000, 55,000 for the year, or 25% of your adjusted net income. So if you're showing 100,000, you can put 25,000 in a SEP IRA and write all of that money off. Still your money, you're just putting it in a different location for tax strategies. And then, then you're going to go invest it and make that into more money. But that is a huge, probably if you're saving your money right, probably top 3 deduction. And a couple other personal deductions. Your house is huge, your kids, any medical expenses, charity, that different stuff. The second big investment in tax strategy I've been utilizing over the last couple of years is called an HSA, a health savings account. Now, this is again, consult a professional, but you have to have a specific health insurance plan. It has to be HSA eligible. And if you're like me and you go through the marketplace, it'll say it right in the name of the insurance plan, HSA eligible, disaster plan, doesn't do shit. That's what my health insurance plan is called. But that will let you fund an HSA plan, which as a couple, as an individual, I think you put 3,500 into it or 3,900. As a couple, you can put, I think, up to 7,500 in there each year. You don't pay taxes when you put it in, as long as you use it for medical expenses, including therapy and dentist work and prescriptions and long-term care. You don't pay taxes on it when it's coming out. Let's say if you get to 65 and you need to use it for non-medical expenses, you just pay regular income tax on that money like any other regular IRA would be. So there's really no sense in not doing that. I think the statistic is like 90% of your medical expenses occur in the last 6 months of your life. And so I know when I go to the dentist, I'm not spending my active income to go to the dentist. I'm using profits on investments within that account. And so that's really all I have. But I know, Garrett Hollyfield's about to have a kid, and he's going to use that account to hit his max out of pocket. And then the insurance company is going to take care of the rest. but he won't pay taxes on any of the money he spends on that. So he's really saving like 20, 30% on his dollar. So that's really cool. The third one is a Roth IRA. SEP is before taxes, Roth is after taxes. But most people are big fans of Roth IRAs because you don't pay taxes when the money comes out. And most people in America are under the understanding that in 40 years from now, taxes will be higher than they are now. And most people think, when they made traditional IRAs, the idea was that your tax bracket, your income will be lower when you're in retirement than it is when you're working. But if you work right, your income will actually be higher in retirement. Look at Harvey. His income is astronomically higher in semi-retirement than it is when he was at NASB. And I know people in my personal life that are retired and they curse not funding a Roth IRA because their income is so much higher now in retirement because they did everything right. They just did it through the wrong vehicle. So check that out. Roth IRA, SEP IRA, HSA, these are all maximizers of getting your dollar to work harder for you. But what's important is you have to have the dollar, right? So if you're constantly working, paycheck to paycheck in this business and you're never getting ahead in your savings, you'll never use any of these vehicles. And so pay yourself first, right? Before you pay anything else, pay yourself first. And once you get to, I was talking to Ashley earlier before we started this call, and we were just, when we were running the breakout session, I was getting a lot of questions about, well, should I do this? Should I do that? This is my situation. And I completely understand all the questions. But what I wanted people to understand is that when you are living in a state of deficit financially, every situation, every decision is arduous, and it feels like a million decisions, and the stress and everything that's happening is tenfold. But if you can delay that decision until you're living a life of excess, you'll make decisions really quickly and they won't be stressful at all. And that's where we're kind of getting to with this delayed gratification is you have the power in this business to dictate what you make. There's nobody putting a number to you. And so a lot of times we get bogged down in these tiny decisions along the way financially that actually cost us our potential and income because of the decisions we make financially when we're living in a deficit. So I hope that helps somebody. Anything to add there on those kind of counts?
We've got some more stuff here. I just wanted to add on also is the traditional, the SEP IRA, the Roth IRA, the HSA, and then also I want you guys to write this down is the 401k solo. If you have a spouse, understand that they could potentially be what's called a fourth quarter employee, or they could be an annual ongoing full-time employee. So I don't care if they're writing thank you cards to your seniors, right? They are working with you. So, for years, Dustin was a stay-at-home dad, but he was seen as a fourth quarter employee for me. And that was a write-off, whether it was $25,000, it was a write-off for me. This past year, obviously, because, I made over $1 million. Last year, we pointed him at making, no joke, like $300,000. So the 401k solo is really cool because it's almost like you're the employer and you're able to have your employee in there. So now you're getting an even more write-off if you actually go into that. So just a heads up on that one, but love how you touched on the HSA. I'm reading some of these questions in here. And, when I ask the people the question about, hey, look, what would you want to accomplish? What's that thing that, that first thing that you would want to do with wealth accumulation? A lot of you guys said that you want to pay off debt. I'm going to go ahead and be honest with you. And Blaire, look, man, correct me if I'm wrong, but guys, and again, y'all know me, I'm very non-sugarcoating when it comes to business. I'm going to be real with you. It's a broke mindset to say you want to be debt free. That's what broke people say. When you are of wealth, you've got to understand that there's a difference between good debt and bad debt. Does that make sense? So in other words, what's bad debt? Bad debt is your credit card crap debt. You should if you've got multiple credit cards, your goal, you want to talk to your direct coach because there are strategies in this to actually increase your credit score where you can pay down that debt, but don't do it right now. Does that make sense? Now, again, if it's going towards your business expenses, you want to do what literally Blaire just talked about and preached on and taught on at the very beginning about your personal account, business account. That's what you should be doing. Your ultimate goal is to have one business credit card. Make sense? And that's going to be attached to that business account. And the neat thing is make sure you got points on it, whether it's frequent flyer miles or, I always get cash back. So I get hundreds and hundreds of dollars every single month for things I'm going to spend on, but you better make sure that you pay it off every single month. Not right now though. Does that make sense? Not right now. Don't say, oh, I can go buy a car. Look, guys, I could go put cash down on all of my vehicles, but understand that there's strategy in it. Here's a couple tips. When you go buy a new car, number one, don't you dare buy it within your first 6 months, unless your direct coach says it's a great idea. Okay. Don't do that. Delayed, but not denied. What Brian Celestine say, delayed, but not denied. Delayed gratification. What Blaire was talking about is don't do anything crazy, like insane, like going on a $2,000 vacation or going on these luxurious dates for 2 years. Live broke, but don't have a broke mindset. And what we mean by that is you want to put cash as king. You want to funnel as much cash in that little personal account of yours as you possibly can. Why? Because you'll understand later that you'll be able, like what he was saying, is not having a deficit mindset. Because if you're constantly living in a deficit mindset, you can't upgrade your car, right? So Jordan Smith has taught me this for years now. Don't put money down on a car, Ashley, because that's seen as good debt as long as your interest is below that 4 to 5%. Your house, my house, I just got this $1 million house I got a year ago. I think my interest rate is like 2.35 or something percent. That's good debt. This is a phenomenal investment. Why the freak would I want to pay it off? Does this make sense? Right? So I put over 25% down because of the loan I had to get. But understand, guys, it's about timing. It's about timing. It's about timing. So when I was doing my cars and, Jordan said, don't pay off your cars, Ashley. You can do double payments if you want to, as long as you have an insane amount of cash flow over here. But the neat thing is when I got this house, literally the mortgage person said, you're going to have to pay off your cars, which was $84,000. I was just telling Blaire this. So in the same darn month last year, I paid off both of my cars, which was $84,000, had to put $225,000 on this house. Then I had to renovate this house the first month, $110,000. And I also had to pay taxes, which I don't even know how much that was. I think altogether with my IRA, I had to funnel in like $126,000. So I had to shout out close to $400,000 in cash in 1 month. Thank you, NASB. I was freaked out. No joke. I'm like, right? But Jordan said, Ashley, you're about to make it all back within 4 to 5 months. You're going to be fine. Do you trust it when your direct coach says, if you do this, you're going to be fine? And he was right. Jordan is always right. I kid you not. I wish he was on this call so then he could hear me say that. But legit, when it comes to finances, this guy is always right. So I really want to, you were talking about reverse engineering your goals and living by design and not having that deficit mindset, getting your personal finances on paper. It starts with self-awareness. Where are you right now with your budget, with your personal expenses, the outgo of whatever it is that your family needs to eat and survive? You don't need no $600 a week budget on food, lion, and groceries. I lived on a $30 budget before NASB because I was so poor. Trust me, you can do it, right? So guys, your goal is to literally plush as much money as you can. Chad Milner said at the convention this past week, I said, yo, how much should you have in savings? How much? What should I be investing? He said, Ashley, cash is king, man. Cash is king, cash is king, cash is king. Save, 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 save. I'm like, yes, sir. Everyone's going to have a different opinion about it. So what would you say about that, Blaire?
Yeah, I would say, as far as people are always asking, should I pay down debt? And I'm not telling you to ignore your debt or let it run run wild or get out of control. But what happens is if you don't have that hoarded cash and you let's say you get 10 grand in savings, and it's the first $10,000 you ever have. And then you go pay off that $10,000 debt that you have. And then something happens, right? You total your car, or, a medical, something happens. And then all of a sudden now you got to loan out that emergency. And you constantly become a slave to debt until you can hoard that cash, keep them all at bay, right? You want to maintain them. You don't want to be, frivolous and blanking on the word, but you want to pay the minimums at least, keep it all under control, build your credit, right? But then once you have control over that money, then you get to decide what you really want to do. That's a totally different way of looking at your debt. And so when you have enough money to pay off the debt, you may not, and then you have enough money in all the other savings funds that you've already set goals to, and you're living in that excess that we're talking about. Now you get to decide, okay, is this debt that big of a headache now, or should I just let it ride and let it go and pay itself off, right? And that's a great place to be. And you may decide, you know what, I'm going to let the car bill ride, or I'm going to let the student loan ride, or I'm going to let this go. I will say, like, credit cards, those should be, once you get to that place, the first, you want to look at interest rates, highest down, eliminate those highest ones. You want to have your game plan, right? I think the biggest thing, no matter what your game plan is, if you have a game plan, you're miles ahead of most people. And so write it down, have a game plan, and then stick to it, because most people don't. And that's why they end up in those situations. But I'll end it with this. What I love about this business, again, is that you get to decide what you're worth. And there's kind of two sides to that. And I'll start here. Most of the people are going to say, well, how do I get this business to, how do I get to that level of income that you guys are talking about that's going to allow me to save this much money? And I really think it comes from valuing your time. And if both classes that I ran on this subject, I asked, who wants to make 100,000? Every hand in the room went up. I said, awesome. Guess what? In the 40 hours that you're supposed to be in the field, if you're not doing something worth $50 an hour that's taking you out of the field, you're losing money. And I'll give you a perfect example. We had an awesome, stellar agent in Michigan. She was just a killer. What she would do, she was worth $1,000 a day. Easy. She was just so good in the field. Her daughter she had a grandchild, young daughter. What she would do is she would let her daughter take her car to her minimum wage job, and she would babysit her kid throughout the day, so she couldn't be in the field. Rather than pay her daughter minimum wage and then pay for a babysitter, whatever it may be, and then go in the field and make $1,000. That is exactly what I'm talking about. You have to value your time, and it comes from little tiny decisions. These little eroders of your time value are extreme. These urchins of your time value, sometimes they're not even noticeable, but you have to be very cognizant of them. And a lot of the times they come from the people that you love the most. And you have to really communicate, hey, look, I understand that I'm your relative, or I'm your best friend, or I'm this, or I'm that to you, but this is what I need to accomplish in this time. And if I can't make this in this time, this is what I'm worth in the field. If I'm not making that, well, then we need to figure out how to get whatever you need in that time paid for, because it's not worth mine. And it's that simple. And I don't know what that is for you, but I hope that illustrates that point. But once you master that, you can really jump into what I call lifestyle design. And it starts with getting your personal finances down on paper, to the nitty gritty. When I was just an agent in the field, I knew everything, all of my expenses, including my groceries, including my bar tabs, including everything that I wanted to accomplish, my savings goals, everything. I had it down to a weekly goal. And then I had that illustrated into AP for the week. So I knew how much AP I needed to write to accomplish that lifestyle that I had set up. And if you can get that personal finances on paper, you can reverse engineer those goals and those necessities into AP in this business. And then your coach, whoever you work with, if you say, hey, look, this is the income that I need, this is my absolute bare minimum monthly income. That's not a lifestyle design. That's just, you need to know that number. They'll be able to reverse engineer that into AP. But what's awesome is then you get to start dreaming, right? Then you get to say, hey, look, I do want a new car. Okay, well, what's the car payment going to be? The car payment's going to be $500. Okay, awesome. Well, how do I get an extra $500 in this business? Is pretty easy. It's $1,000 AP in a month. I mean, that's how simple it is. If you don't have $10,000 saved up, or you want $10,000 towards anything, $10,000 in a year is $1,700 of AP a month. That's it. I mean, that's $840 in commissions a month in advances, $1,700 in AP a month. At the end of the year, you'll have $10,000 set aside from just those, I don't know what that is. It's like what, $140 app, something like that. But that's what I taught when I'm thinking about lifestyle design. I know how much AP I need to accomplish the future, not just my current lifestyle, right? Hey, my current lifestyle costs me $6,000 a month. So that means I need to write 12,000 net clean issued business every single month to make $6,000 on advances, because my back end pay and all that stuff, that's going to take care of the taxes and the headaches, right? And the chargebacks. And then you get a couple agents going, that's a whole different story. But when you're just an agent, you get to decide the life that you want to live in this business. But it takes a lot of control, and it takes a systemized approach to reverse engineering those goals, and then having the fortitude to stick to those goals no matter what. And that's what excites me so much about this business. Now, you don't have to live the way that you are living currently. You get to decide. It just takes a little effort.
I just kind of written down a couple points because I know we're winding down. We are winding down. Is this, do you believe, all of you guys right now, do you believe that you would perform better if you had nothing in your savings account? Would you perform better? Yes or no? Probably not. Like 2 thumbs down, right? So all of us could probably agree that we as humans will perform better when we've got the security knowing that we could breathe, that our bills are paid, and maybe the next 3 months bills are paid in case you get the coronavirus, or your kid gets sick and you got to stay at home, right? So if we know those things, then why are we not making the daily habits, the daily decisions to making that possible? That's the one thing I don't understand. All of us, literally, there's probably not one person, maybe unless you're a brand new agent, all of us on here have seen, if we're an existing agent, $5, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10, $12,000 a month here, right? So you're making more money than you've ever made. But because of that, if you don't have that savings aside, even $2,000, it's because what you did is, if this is your level of income, you just literally upgraded your lifestyle, when quite frankly, what you should have done is you've upgraded your income, but you should have never upgraded your lifestyle. For 2 years. 2 years. I would stay in motels that had bugs in them. 2 years. And then Greg Baden was the one that told me, Ashley, for the rest of your life, you can stay at a Marriott. I cried. I was like, are you serious? For real? He's like, yeah. He's like, Ashley, when you buy your house, your dream come true that you can buy everything brand new for that house. That's your dream, wasn't it, Ashley? That when you buy your first house, that you can have everything brand new, because everything I ever had when I was living in an apartment, renting a house, renting another house, guess what? Everything was a hand-me-down. Some of you guys, you're afraid of that. Stop. That's when I grew my company, my agency, was when I would bring people in to my broken down house of hand-me-downs with a high school orange desk as my office, with an orange and red boy chair. It was free. And I didn't care what other people thought, because I was on a mission. Some of you guys want to invite people to your house because you're embarrassed of your surroundings. But it's not what matters where you are now. What matters is where you're going. And the cool thing is people get to see that, right? So I just have a couple of notes. Out-earn your deficit. Out-earn your deficit. Out-earn your deficit by reverse engineering what you're needing. If you're an agent, how many apps do you need? Just like what Blaire said. You're like, oh, but that's out of my comfort zone. Actually, I'm used to doing 8 presentations a week. Congratulations. If you want this, you've got to upgrade your work ethic. Sorry, Charlie, you got to upgrade it. If you're a builder, Guess what? You got to get out of your comfort zone. If you're used to doing 1 interview a week, upgrade that work ethic and do 10 to 15 interviews a week. Make sense? We just saw what? Will Kemp, I don't know if he's on your team or not, but what, Will, who did RVP in a year, in a month, and this buck of a sharp young man comes up on stage and he's what, 26? You're telling me that you can't do something? No, it's because you're telling your brain that. So stop telling your brain that you're broke. Stop it. Whatever you tell the world, your brain will want to prove you right. Next, I would recommend, if you can, start positioning your bills to being paid from the 1st to the 5th. Try to get your bills. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen probably this month, but you want to get to a position within the next 6 months where you can have all your bills paid from the 1st to the 5th. Why? Because from the 6th on, guess what that is? Baby, bring it on. I'm about to make in a whole bunch of money. So it's a race. It's a competition. That's one of the things I did for years is I had a competition with myself. I know John Cisco does this, and Laura, well, they'll say, okay, Ashley, this is what I made last month together. I made XYZ. And then they're like, but man, we're going to crush it this month. Beat better than your best. You should be pissed if you made less last month than the previous month. Make sense? You should be pissed at yourself. You should be upset that you didn't put the amount of savings that you wanted aside. Don't wait until the tragedy hits, until you get coronavirus, and then you're 3 weeks down for the count, and then you've got pneumonia and you can't work, right? Don't wait until the tragedy hits for you to realize that, darn, maybe I shouldn't have done that vacation. Maybe I shouldn't have gone out to dinner that way. Maybe I shouldn't have put my darn kids in private school yet. My kids are still not in private school. They're on a darn waiting list, right? And we waited until this year to put them in private school. This year, right? So I had to pull them out in the very beginning because it's like, I should be spending $400 a month. What did I do? I put that money into my business. I reinvested that money into my business. I didn't go on dates. I reinvested in Breakfast of Champions. I reinvested that in incentives. I reinvested that in hotels, in gas money, in leads, paying for leads for people, right? It's called being a business owner. Put your business first, because when you do that, you're putting your family first indirectly. Does that make sense? So then you can have the life that you legit could possibly dream of. And I'm telling you from experience, and this in closing, and Blaire, feel free to definitely close us out with any ending words. Guys and girls, it's worth it. Whatever price you have to pay, whatever stretching you've got to go through, whatever comfort zone you got to tackle, it is worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. Because you can't help people if you're broke. You can't, right? Broke people can't help broke people. You want to start changing lives and making an impact, creating foundations, being that person in your church that can really, really make an impact financially and helping, during Christmas time. It starts right now with the decisions that you make. Does that make sense? It starts right now. So Blaire, I'm going to pass it off to you and we can close.
No, that was great. I think the only reason that you wouldn't start doing this stuff if you're not already is belief, and really belief in two ways: belief in yourself and belief in this system, and then ownership. Maybe it's just so bad that you don't want to own it, right? Maybe it's just so stressful that you can't own it, because if you own it, then it's your fault. And even if it's not your fault, you have to own it sometimes. And so I would say believe in yourself, believe that if the leadership here was able to accomplish what they've accomplished, if Ashley has, if I have, if Nick has, if Will has, if Laura Muse has, if, go on and on. If one woman can do, another woman can do. If one man can do, another can do. If we can believe in ourselves, and I promise you, if you've been invited, if you're one of the 90 people that was invited to the Zoom, somebody believed in you and thought that this would help you. Believe in yourself and put this to work. I appreciate you guys' time.
Absolutely, guys. Over and out. Y'all have a great night. Appreciate your time.